Hey, what's up everybody? Today I'm going to be swapping out my rear shock, the stock coil shock right there. Not for any reason in particular, just want to try something different. This is one of the few stock parts left on the scooter. I went ahead and bought a air shock. It's the A5 model RR1. The RR1 is a dual chamber, so it has a chamber for the pressure or weight, so to speak, and another one for the rebound rate. They have another model that's the RE, which is a single chamber. That'll be a little cheaper, but this is the dual chamber one. That's why it's a little more expensive. I did get on Amazon at that store there, and it is the 125 millimeter, and as it says right there, the RR1 model, which is again the dual chamber one. And I paid $70 for it, and I got it overnight. That's kind of the reason why I bought it through Amazon, because I wanted to get it quicker. As with any of these scooter parts, you can, or mountain bike parts, you can get them on AliExpress for about half the price that you can on Amazon, if you're willing to wait a week to maybe 2 or up to 3 weeks to get it, depending on what it is. As I mentioned, this is a 125 millimeter shock, and what that means is from center hole to center hole, it's 125 millimeters. The stock one that is on the scooter is 130 millimeters. So 125, 5 millimeters isn't going to be a big difference. It should fit perfectly still. 5 millimeters either way, so like 125 to 135 should fit just fine. I wouldn't try to go much further out than that, or you're going to risk having it not fit. I'm not going to show the whole disassembly process. I have other video on the disassembly and reassembly the rear end. Anyway, so first I'm just going to pull off my brake caliper to get it up out of the way off the wheel to make it easier to get the wheel off, then take off my hardware there, remove the rear motor, set all that aside. I'll put some weight, the cinder block, up on the deck, so when I remove the rear wheel, the weight from the front wheel doesn't shift the whole scooter forward and make it flip. Okay, you got the rear caliper and motor up and out of the way. Next, there's 3 pivot points in this rear swing arm. They allow the movement of the shock and the rear end in general to pivot while the shock does its job. So there's 3 pivot points. 2 of them go through the shock. There's one here, which goes to the bottom of the shock. There's one here, goes to the top of the shock. And then the third one is back here, tying the swing arm to the chassis. So those are pivot points. We only need to remove the 2, so we don't have to disassemble everything. We just need to remove the one that goes to the bottom of the shock and the top of the shock. This one right here we don't need to remove, but I want to loosen it so we have some play there so I can get things apart and put them back together. When you do this, take a picture, take your phone and take a picture of the orientation of the hardware. For example, this bottom one has this long spacer, and then there's a nylon washer, then the shock, nylon washer, long spacer. Anyway, top one's a little different. There's more hardware involved up there. There's 2 spacers and 2 nylon washers. Take your phone, take a picture of it, so when you put it back together, you have something back to refer back to. Okay, so I loosened the swing arm bolts up here, and then I removed this bottom one, so the bottom of the shock is free. Now I just need to remove this one on top, and then the shock will pop out of there. I got the rear shock off, and as you can see, it's a little bit bigger than the new one. I'm going to measure this here. So center hole to center hole on the stock shock is 130 millimeters, and on the new one, 125. So center hole to center hole, that's the measurement they're talking about when you're looking at shock heights. So as a side note, you can adjust these with this star nut on top. If you loosen the nut, the more you loosen it, the more the spring can expand, and that's going to create a more springy, softer ride. If you tighten the nut, it's going to compress the spring, which is going to result in a stiffer, not so bouncy ride. Before I go ahead and mount this up, I have to remove these spacers. Obviously that's not going to fit on the axle, so I need to remove that, and then the axle will take up all the space where the hole is. I guess mountain bikes have a smaller diameter, that's why that spacer's in there. Okay, pop that little metal sleeve out on this side, and again it's just a aluminum sleeve that goes through, and then this is just press fit on the other side. So I just took my vice grips there, got a hold of it, pulled this side off, and then the rest of it just came out the other end. There's a rubber sleeve left in there, but I'm going to leave that in there because that is now the perfect size to fit over this axle. All right, I'm ready to mount this. I'm going to start by mounting the top bolt back through with all the hardware. All right, got it mounted in there. One thing, I did have to mount it upside down due to the air fill mechanism on the top side here. When I had it the other way, there wasn't enough clearance. It was interfering with the mounting air here. So I flipped around, put the bottom on top. That one just comes out of the front here, the air valve, so it's not on the side like this one, and that's what the problem was. So mounted upside down, shouldn't be any difference. Okay, now I just need to, I didn't completely tighten down my hardware. It's fairly loose yet because I want to get my back wheel on first and tighten the wheel before I tighten those other guys down. Okay, got the rear wheel back on. Now I'm just going to snug up my 3 pivot points here. You don't want to over tighten these, just tighten them, snug them up. These are self-locking washers. They have that blue plastic stuff in them, so they shouldn't back off by themselves. Got everything back together, hardware tightened down. So they have some quantity of air in the chambers. As it is, I don't know what that number is. They say you can put the main chamber up to 200 psi, and then the rebound chamber can't be more than the main chamber. My first impression of where it is right now, just standing on it, it sinks down with my weight. It seems to me that it's maybe a little underinflated. However, I do still have some rebound there, so I'm not bottoming out. Okay, so I definitely need to adjust the air amount in the chambers. There's too much sag in it now, so I'm going to pull the shock off again, and mainly because on the scooter here, you know, again, this is a mountain bike shock. On scooters, not a lot of room in there to get at the air valves, and I cannot fit my pump onto those valves with them on scooters, so I'm going to have to pull it off. All right, so I got the shock back off. I'm now going to adjust the air pressure in the chambers. The reason why I didn't do that initially the other day is because I didn't have the proper pump to add air to these shocks. You can't use your normal standard tire pump, so I had to go and buy a $10 pump off Amazon here, specifically for this. It has a high pressure meter on it. Okay, so I figured out the way that this blue valve thing is actually supposed to work. I want 150 psi in my main chamber there. I've pumped it up to 175, so 25 psi higher than I want. And that's because when I release the blue valve, so I'll hear some air come out. There it is. And now my meter's gone back down to 0, and the valve is back in its normal position, so I can remove the silver piece without letting any more air out. I can close this valve again to open the valve in the stem and get my pressure back, and now you can see I am right at 150 pounds psi. So when I unscrew the blue valve, I'm losing 25 psi from what the meter's seeing, so therefore I want to pump it up 25 psi higher than I want, so when I release the valve it ends up right at 150. I'm going to redo my lower chamber and put 50 psi in that in the same way, so I'll have 150 in the top chamber and 50 in the bottom chamber, and I'll see where I'm at then. Okay, so 150 psi in the main chamber, 50 psi in the second chamber is perfect for the weight of the scooter with my weight on it. Checking the sag percentage of the scooter, this is about perfect. So there's 2 things you need to know in order to calculate your sag percentage. The first one is what is the total travel of your shock. Again, I have the RR1 dual chamber shock. I have the 125 millimeter length one, and the travel for this shock is 20 millimeters. On my shock, there's this rubber O-ring here, and that's how you measure how much the shock is moving. So I'm going to put that all the way down so it's even with the bottom of the shock there. So now I'm just going to put my weight on it again, but not bounce. Okay, so now if we look at that O-ring on the shock piston again, we can see there's a space now, and that's how much travel we had with my weight on it. That's called the sag, and we're going to measure that in millimeters. Each one of these lines is a millimeter,
Just to make this easy the way I've got it right now, I'm just going to line up the 2 at the bottom of the O-ring, and then you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 millimeters of travel there. So now we can calculate the amount of sag percentage that we're getting, and to do that you take how much sag you have, which is 5 millimeters. You divide that by the total travel of your particular shock. In my case, that's 20 millimeters. You multiply that times 100, and that gives you your percentage. So I'm at 25% sag percentage right now, which is the low end, which would be for more stiffer ride on pavement, smooth pavement, which is majority of my riding. You get more of a bouncier ride for like off-roading. You would let some air out of the shock, the main chamber, and then try to achieve a sag of closer to 30 to 35%. The higher range will be for a softer, more off-road type suspension. Okay, just to show you the suspension now that I've got the proper amount of air in for how I want to ride and the surface I want to ride on. Put my weight on it, it doesn't sag down as much anymore as it used to before I adjusted it, and it feels really good. And last time I had it taken apart before I made my final adjustments, I painted up my parts on the back here. I made my swing arms purple, metallic purple, high gloss, and then my hardware in there I just sprayed with like a black metallic. Alright, so I've ridden this thing about 20 miles now since putting this air shock on here. I really like it. I do prefer it over the coil shock that came stock on the scooter. Although there's nothing wrong with these. I've always had these on all my scooters up to this point, and I always thought they worked pretty good. It's a little bit of a different feeling. I think it's the rebound more than anything that you get from the coil spring that you can dampen down with that second air chamber on the air shock there. So all in all, yeah, I think it's a good upgrade for the scooter. Nicer if I had paid less money and got it off AliExpress for about 40 bucks. I bought off Amazon and paid 70 bucks for it. Still, I'm happy with it. I didn't mind paying the extra just to get it overnight. All right, well, that's about all for this one, guys. Until next time, take care, peace, ride safe.